I screamed so loud that day my voice cracked. The plate in my hand dropped and shattered across the floor, just like my heart had shattered 1,000 times over the past 10 years. But this time, I didn't pick up the pieces. I looked straight into Harold's face, my husband for 38 years, and said words I never thought I'd say out loud. "I'm leaving you." He laughed. That cruel, slow laugh that always made me feel small. He didn't believe me, not after all the years I'd stayed quiet. Not after all the times I'd swallowed my pain. But I meant it. And the moment I picked up my purse and walked out that door, I knew my silence had finally ended. What pushed me to that point? What made a woman like me, a grandmother of 6, break free after a decade of pain? I'll tell you everything. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Martha Green. I'm 67 years old, and I live in a small town called Pine Hill, nestled in the hills of North Carolina. I'm just your regular OL grandma with silver curls, sensible shoes, and a deep love for banana bread. But I've got a story to tell that'll shake you. So before we go any further, please do me a small favor. Like this video, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss the rest of this roller coaster. Now tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I want to know what corner of the country you're in, because honey, this story touches every heart, no matter the zip code. Now let me take you back to where it all began. It was a sunny Tuesday morning when I first noticed something was wrong. I was 57 at the time, and Harold had just retired early from his job at the paper mill. Most couples would celebrate that kind of news. Travel the world, play golf, maybe even finally go ballroom dancing like we always dreamed about. But that's not what happened. Instead, Harold turned bitter, moody. He said the mill threw him out like trash, and he started taking it out on everyone around him, mostly me. At first, it was small things. He'd grumble about dinner being too cold, or too salty, or too late. He'd snap if the kids called too early in the morning. I thought it was just stress. Retirement can be hard on a man. I gave him space. I offered comfort. I prayed. But then it got worse. He started calling me names. Ugly ones. Words I won't repeat here, but they stung deep. I remember one night he stood in the doorway of our bedroom and told me I was dead weight. That I had nothing to offer the world anymore. I didn't fight back. Not then. I just stood there, holding my nightgown tight to my chest like it could protect my heart. I cried a lot in those days. I'd wait until he went to bed. Then I'd sneak into the laundry room, sit on the floor between the dryer and the wall, and cry into a towel. That way no one could hear me. That was my quiet little corner of pain. But I didn't tell a soul. Not my children. Not my best friend Linda. Not even my pastor. I wore a smile at church. I baked cookies for the neighborhood kids. I posted birthday pictures with Harold on Facebook, like everything was fine. I suffered in silence. And Harold? He knew I wouldn't leave. I was too loyal. Too scared. Too bound by years of marriage and a promise I made before God. And maybe a part of me still believed he'd come back, the sweet, funny Harold who used to dance with me in the kitchen to old jazz records. But that Harold was gone. One night, he threw a bowl of soup at the wall just because I put too many carrots in it. The glass shattered, and I stood frozen as he stormed out. I cleaned it up in silence, like always. Later that night, I stood by the kitchen sink staring out at the empty yard. My hands were shaking. And then I heard it, his voice behind me. "You're lucky I put up with you," he said. "If you ever leave me, you'll regret it. No one wants an old woman like you." I nodded. I always nodded. But something inside me started to shift. That shift turned into a spark the day my youngest granddaughter, Ellie, came to visit. She was just 8 years old then, with pigtails and the sass of a full-grown woman. She saw me rubbing my shoulder after Harold had yanked it during an argument. And she asked with her sweet little voice, "Grandma, why are you always sad?" That question hit me like a truck. Stayed in my bones. That night I sat in bed and asked myself, why am I always sad? The answer terrified me. Because I had allowed it. Because I had stayed. I started to do small things. I wrote letters to myself, things I'd never said out loud. I wrote about the time he broke my favorite tea set and blamed me. I wrote about how I missed my mother's hugs. I wrote about how lonely I felt in my own home. I started walking to the park every morning, pretending it was for the birds. But it was really for the silence. A silence that belonged to me. Not the silence of suffering, but the silence of peace. Then came the turning point. One Sunday morning, Harold forgot to pick me up from church. I waited on the steps for an hour before I walked home. When I got inside, he was watching TV, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. "You didn't call," I said softly. "You got two legs," he replied, not even looking at me. That's when something broke inside me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned around, walked to the bedroom, and locked the door. That night, I didn't make dinner. He banged on the door. I stayed quiet. The next day, I visited the library and checked out books about emotional abuse. That's when I found the word narcissist. And Lord, it was like someone had written a book about my life. I started planning. Quietly. Carefully. I saved money in an old cookie tin in the back of the pantry. I reached out to my childhood friend Debbie in Tennessee and asked if she could take me in for a little while. She said yes without asking a single question. But then, just as I was ready to leave, something happened that nearly derailed everything. It was a Wednesday evening. I'd just gotten off the phone with Debbie, finalizing the date I'd take the bus. I walked into the kitchen to grab some tea. And that's when I saw Harold standing there, holding my cookie tin. His face was red. His eyes were wild. "What the hell is this, Martha?" I froze. I said, "What is this money for?" "Huh. Planning a little getaway behind my back." I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. He stepped closer. "You think you're leaving me?" And just like that, the world stopped. His voice turned into a roar. The mug in his hand flew across the room. He grabbed my wrist. Tight. So tight I thought the bones might snap. I gasped. Then, without thinking, I slapped him. Hard. It was the first time I ever hit back. And in that split second, I saw fear in his eyes. Not anger, fear. And that was the moment I knew. He wasn't as strong as I thought he was. But what happened next? Oh Lord. That was the night everything came crashing down. Just as I stepped back from him, heart pounding, I heard a voice behind me. Grandma. I turned around slowly. Ellie, my granddaughter, standing in the doorway, watching it all. Ellie's tiny voice cut through the thick silence like a blade. "Grandma, what's going on?" I froze. My hand was still shaking from what I had just done. Harold stood a few feet behind me, stunned into silence for the first time in years. And there, in the doorway, was my sweet, wide-eyed granddaughter, clutching her little stuffed bunny with both hands. I turned around slowly, willing myself to speak, but the lump in my throat held my words hostage. What could I say? That her grandpa, who smiled at her and slipped her cookies behind my back, had just grabbed me like a rag doll? That I'd just slapped him across the face in a moment of terror and fury? "Baby, it's okay," I finally whispered, walking toward her and kneeling. "You shouldn't have seen that. Grandma's had a rough night." She looked past me at Harold, then back at me. "Did Grandpa hurt you?" And just like that, my silence broke again. My lips trembled, and I nodded. Just once. Her eyes filled with tears. She dropped the bunny and hugged me so tight I thought my heart would shatter. Not from pain, but from 10 years of holding it all in. Harold said nothing. He turned and stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the bedroom door behind him. And for the first time, I didn't chase after him. I scooped Ellie into my arms and carried her to the guest room. "Let's get you ready for bed, sugar," I said softly, brushing her hair behind her ear. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. That night, as she lay beside me, I stared up at the ceiling with my eyes wide open. I didn't sleep. Not a second. I couldn't stop thinking. If he could do that with her in the house, what would he do if I tried to leave for real? The next morning, I called my daughter, Rebecca. "Come get Ellie," I told her, trying to keep my voice even. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Is everything okay?"
No.
"It's not. And I'll explain later. But please, I need you to come now." Within an hour, she was on the porch. I handed Ellie over, kissed her forehead and whispered, "Grandma loves you more than anything." Rebecca looked at me with suspicion in her eyes. "Mom, what happened?" I hesitated. "Soon," I whispered. "But not today." She nodded, took Ellie by the hand and left. And I stood there alone in the doorway watching my baby and my grandbaby walk away. Because I knew the war wasn't over yet. That afternoon, Harold acted like nothing had happened. Want to go out for dinner? He asked casually from the couch, flipping through TV channels. I could go for some ribs. I stared at him, stunned. Dinner? Yeah. What are you still mad about last night? You know how you get when you're all emotional. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked back into the kitchen. But inside something was bubbling, growing. Over the next few days he started changing tactics. Less yelling, more charm. He brought home flowers. Cheap ones like always, but flowers still. He told me I looked nice when I wore my blue dress. He even made dinner one night, burned the chicken and overcooked the beans but tried. But I wasn't fooled. This wasn't love. This was manipulation. He knew I was slipping through his fingers, and he was trying to reel me back in. I kept planning. I moved the cookie tin to a new hiding spot, under the loose floorboard in the back closet. I made copies of my important documents and stashed them at Linda's place down the street. I started telling friends I was thinking of taking a trip to test the waters. Every step felt risky, like walking a tightrope with no net. Then one day at the grocery store, I bumped into my old friend Gladys. We hadn't seen each other in months. Lord, Martha, you've lost weight, she said, tilting her head. Everything all right? I hesitated. My usual answer, I'm fine, was right on the tip of my tongue. But something in her eyes told me I didn't have to lie this time. Not really, I said softly. She blinked. Want to talk? I did. And I did. Right there, next to the frozen peas, I told her everything. Not in full detail, but enough. Enough to feel lighter. Enough to know I wasn't crazy. Enough to finally breathe. She squeezed my hand tight and said, I always wondered. You didn't look happy. Not for a long time. We talked for over an hour. I cried in the car afterward. Not because I was sad, but because someone finally saw me. The next morning, Harold asked why the laundry hadn't been done. I had a lot on my mind, I said simply. His eyes narrowed. You've been strange lately. No, I said, looking him dead in the eye. I've just been quiet. There's a difference. And that's when I knew the final moment was close. I made one last call to Debbie in Tennessee. I'm ready, I said. I'm coming in 3 days. I've got enough money saved for the ticket. I just need you to meet me at the station. You got it, honey, she said. I'll bring cookies. The night before I planned to leave, I started packing small things into a duffel bag. Just enough for a few days. I could come back later for the rest. I was in the bedroom, folding my favorite cardigan, when I heard footsteps behind me. Harold. He was holding my phone. You were on the phone with Debbie, he said flatly. What's going on? I froze. You think I don't know what you're doing? His voice rose. You think you're going to sneak off like some kind of runaway teenager? You think people are going to believe your little sob story? I don't care what people believe, I said calmly, my voice shaking. You're not leaving me, he snapped. And then he did something I didn't expect. He stepped forward and locked the bedroom door. Sit down, he said, motioning to the edge of the bed. I didn't move. I said sit. I backed away, my heart racing. His eyes were wild, unhinged. Something in him had snapped. You leave me, I lose everything, he said, breathing hard. You don't get to do that. I reached for my phone, but he grabbed it and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. And then he lunged at me. I screamed, fought, kicked. My elbow caught him in the ribs. He stumbled. I bolted for the door, but it was locked. I reached for the window. He grabbed my ankle, yanked me down. We struggled. I clawed at his arms. He slapped me hard. But just as he raised his hand again, the door burst open. We both froze. It was Linda, holding a cast iron frying pan. I knew something was wrong, she shouted. Get your damn hands off her. And with one swift move, she swung that pan. The sound the frying pan made when it hit Harold's shoulder was something I'll never forget. A heavy thud, like metal against meat. He cried out and stumbled backward, crashing into the dresser. The lamp fell, shattering on the floor beside him. Linda. I gasped. She stood in the doorway, panting, her eyes blazing. I've been calling you for hours. When you didn't answer, I knew something was wrong. And thank God I still had that spare key." Harold groaned from the floor, cradling his arm. "She's crazy," he mumbled. "Both of you crazy old bats." Linda looked at him with a stare that could curdle milk. "Say another word, Harold. I dare you." I was frozen. My body shook. I didn't even realize I was crying until Linda wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "You're safe now, Martha. I've got you." But I wasn't safe. Not yet. Linda called the police. And for once, I didn't beg her not to. I didn't try to protect Harold or explain things away like I had so many times before. "I'm done lying," I told her. "I'm done pretending." The officers arrived quickly. I sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, while Linda spoke to them in the kitchen. When they asked me if I wanted to press charges, I hesitated. Harold sat in the armchair, nursing his shoulder, glaring at me like a wounded animal. But I wasn't afraid anymore. "Yes," I said. "Ido." He scoffed. "Over a little argument?" "No," I said firmly. "Over 10 years of silence. Over 10 years of pain. Over everything." They cuffed him. He protested. He threatened to sue. He shouted that I was lying. But the officers didn't listen to him. And neither did I. As they let him out, he looked back at me one last time. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just said, "Goodbye, Harold." When the door closed behind him, my knees gave out and I sank to the floor. Linda rushed to my side. "It's over," I whispered. She shook her head. "No, honey. It's just beginning." The next morning, I woke up on Linda's couch. My back ached, but my heart was light for the first time in years. The sun poured through the window like a warm hug. I sat up slowly, listening to the soft hum of the kettle in the kitchen. Linda walked in with 2 mugs of tea. "Chamomile," she said. "Figured you could use some peace." I smiled. "Thank you. For everything." She sat beside me. "You don't have to thank me. You just have to start living." But living was harder than I expected. In the days that followed, I went back to the house only to grab essentials. Every corner, every creak in the floor reminded me of Harold's voice, his footsteps, his rage. I couldn't stay there. So I sold it. Just like that. The house I'd lived in for over 30 years, I let it go. Rebecca was furious. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she cried over the phone. "Mom, we would have helped you. I could have gotten you out years ago." "I know," I said gently. "But I wasn't ready. I was too ashamed." She sniffled. "Don't you ever carry that shame again. Do you hear me? What he did was not your fault." Her words stitched a little part of me back together. I stayed with Linda for a few weeks while I sorted everything out. I went to court, gave statements, faced Harold one more time behind glass. He didn't say a word that day, just glared. The judge granted a restraining order. I could finally breathe without looking over my shoulder. But healing, that was the hardest part. I still jumped when doors slammed. I still flinched when someone raised their voice. I still woke up some nights reaching for my phone. Panicked that I'd forgotten to do something that would set Harold off. One day, I broke down in front of my pastor. "I feel weak," I confessed. "Like I wasted my life." He held my hand gently and said, "Martha, you didn't waste your life. You survived it. Now you're reclaiming it." That night, I wrote a letter. Not to Harold, but to myself. I forgave the woman I used to be. I forgave her for staying, for trying, for believing love could fix what evil broke. I told her she was brave. I told her she was free. And I meant every word. Weeks later, Debbie drove down from Tennessee and helped me pack the last of my things. We hugged like teenagers in the driveway. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded. "I think I've been ready for a long time." I moved in with her temporarily, while I figured out the next steps. It was peaceful there. Quiet mornings, sweet tea on the porch, and warm country air that made everything feel lighter. One night, as we sat watching fireflies, she said, "You know what you should do? Share your story. Help other women." I laughed. Who wants to hear about an old woman's pain? She raised an eyebrow. "Honey, you have no idea how many women are still suffering. You have a voice now. Use it." That planted a seed. The next day, I created a Facebook page called Martha's Voice. I posted my story, just a little at first. No names, no big details. But the messages came pouring in. Women from all over the country. Some young, some older than me. All of them with one thing in common. They were silent too. And suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. I started a support group in Debbie's town. We met every Saturday at the community center. 5 women at first. Then 10. Then 20. We sat in a circle, sipped coffee, and told our truths. I watched women bloom, like wildflowers bursting through cracks in pavement. And every time one of them found her strength, it reminded me I had found mine too. But just as life started to feel steady, something unexpected happened. One Thursday morning I received a letter. No return address. The handwriting was familiar. I opened it with trembling fingers. It read, "You think you won. You didn't. I'm getting out soon. And when I do, you better be ready." Ush. My heart dropped. I sat there frozen, the letter shaking in my hand. He was getting out. And he still thought he could break me. But what he didn't know was, I wasn't the same woman anymore. Still, I had to decide, do I run again? Or do I fight, one last time? And that decision would change everything. I held the letter for a long time. My hands were trembling, my heart beat loud in my ears. It was as if I'd been dragged backward in time. Back into that house, back into that kitchen, back into the fear I thought I'd finally escaped. Harold. He was getting out. And he was still trying to scare me. I read the letter again and again, until the words blurred. You think you won. You didn't. I'm getting out soon. And when I do, you better be ready. 10 little words. And every one of them was meant to put me back in chains. I stared out the window at the Tennessee hills, watching the breeze blow through the tall grass. That's when something snapped inside me. Not the same kind of snap from fear or panic, but a new kind. A sharp, hot clarity. No, not this time. He was testing me. He wanted to see if I would crumble, if I'd run, if I'd fall back into silence like I always did. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I picked up the phone and called the county sheriff's office. I read the letter to them word for word, and asked what legal steps I could take to protect myself. "Ma'am," the officer said, "this constitutes a threat. Especially with his history. We can file for an extension of your protection order. And if he contacts you again, he'll be violating parole." I hung up and took a deep breath. Then I called my lawyer. Then I called Linda. And then I called my daughter. When Rebecca picked up and heard my voice, she knew something was wrong. "He's getting out," I said. "He sent me a letter." There was a long pause on the other end. "I'm coming to you," she said. Within 24 hours, she was on my doorstep, suitcase in hand. She didn't bring Ellie, thank God. I didn't want that little girl anywhere near this storm. Rebecca hugged me for a long time. "He won't hurt you again," she whispered. "Not while I'm here." We filed everything. Court documents, restraining order renewals, copies of the threatening letter. We handed it all over to the authorities. But even with the paperwork and protection, I felt it. The fear creeping in at night. The shadows on the wall. The way my mind twisted every knock on the door into footsteps from the past. I hated that feeling. And I hated that Harold still had the power to stir it. So I fought back the only way I knew how. I spoke louder. I went on my Facebook page and posted the full story. The names. The details. The night Linda burst through the door with a frying pan. The bruises. The threats. The years I lost to silence. I ended the post with a picture of the letter and this caption. "He thinks he still owns my fear. But I'm here to say, he doesn't. And if you've ever felt powerless, know this. Your silence doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger than most. And when you're ready, you'll find your voice too." The post went viral overnight. Thousands of shares. Hundreds of messages. Women from all over the world reaching out. Telling their stories. Thanking me. Some even told me they left their abuser after reading it. One woman wrote, "I was sitting in the car with the keys in my hand, too scared to drive away. Then I read your post. And I drove. I'm safe now. Thank you, Martha." I cried reading that. Ugly, messy tears. Because that's when I realized something that changed everything. Harold had taken 10 years of my life. But he gave me something too. He gave me a reason to fight. A purpose. A platform. I started speaking at churches and women's groups. I gave talks at shelters. I met survivors, warriors, and women just like me, older, forgotten, silenced. But not anymore. And then came the moment that pushed everything into a new level. It was the day of the community rally for domestic abuse awareness in Knoxville. They asked me to speak on stage. Me, a grandma from Pine Hill. I was nervous. I wrote my speech by hand, with a shaky pen and tear-stained paper. But when I stepped up to that microphone and looked out at that sea of faces, faces full of pain, hope, and fire, I didn't shake. I told them everything. And I ended my speech with the same words I told Harold that day I left. I suffered in silence for 10 years. But I don't whisper anymore. I roar. The crowd stood. People clapped. Some cried. And in the front row, holding her phone high, was Rebecca, filming every word. That video hit YouTube and exploded. It wasn't long before local news picked it up. Then national. They called me the grandma who roared. But I wasn't trying to be famous. I was trying to be heard. 1 week later, I received a letter. Not from Harold, but from his parole officer. He had read my post. And based on the threatening letter Harold sent me, his early release was revoked. I sat on the porch with the letter in my lap, stunned. He wasn't getting out. Not yet. I could breathe again. But just as I was beginning to feel peace, just as I finally exhaled something I'd been holding for years, another call came. It was Linda. "Martha," she said breathlessly. "Are you sitting down?" My stomach tightened. "What's wrong?" "It's not about Harold. It's about someone else. Someone from your past." "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "It's about your sister." My heart stopped. "My sister." I whispered. "She's been trying to reach you. She's in town. She has something to tell you." I hadn't spoken to my sister Joyce in over 20 years. Not since Mama's funeral. And now out of nowhere she was back? What did she want? What could she possibly say after all this time? And why now, right when I was finally piecing myself back together? The wind rattled the screen door that morning like a whisper of warning. I sat on Debbie's porch swing, coffee in hand, heart racing. The birds were chirping, the trees swayed gently in the breeze, but inside me, a storm was brewing. My sister Joyce. After 2 full decades of silence, she was back. The last time I saw her was at Mama's funeral. She wore black like the rest of us, but her eyes were stone cold. We didn't hug. We didn't even speak. There had been too many wounds between us. Old betrayals, bitter words, and a lifetime of silence that stretched longer than my marriage to Harold ever did. And now out of nowhere she wanted to talk? What does she want? I had asked Linda the night before. She didn't say, Linda replied. Just that she's sorry. That she's ready. Ready for what? That afternoon I met Joyce at a quiet diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where the waitresses still call you hon, and pour your coffee without asking. She was already there, seated in the corner booth by the window. She looked older than I remembered. Gray streaks through her once jet black hair, wrinkles around the eyes, but her presence still sharp. When I walked in, she stood slowly. We stared at each other for a long moment. 2 sisters. 2 lifetimes apart. Then she spoke. "You look good, Martha." I didn't answer. We sat. Neither of us touched the menus. "I saw your video," she said after a long silence. "The one at the rally. About Harold." My jaw tightened. "That was meant for survivors, not for you." "I know," she nodded. "But I saw it. And it broke me." I sipped my coffee. "Why are you here, Joyce?" She looked down at her hands. "To tell you the truth. The truth I should have told you a long time ago." I leaned back, arms folded. "Truth about what?" She looked up, eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years, regret. "About Harold. About why I disappeared after Mama died. About what I knew and didn't say." My whole body stiffened. "You knew." I whispered. "You knew what he was doing to me?" She nodded slowly. Tears filled her eyes. "I suspected. I heard things. I saw bruises once, when you came to Mama's for Thanksgiving that year. You said you'd fallen, but I knew you were lying. I could hardly breathe. Then why didn't you say something? She looked down ashamed. Because I thought if I ignored it, maybe it wasn't real. And because I was afraid of him too. My stomach turned. I had no idea how deep it went until now, she said. But I should have said something. I should have been your sister. I should have been your voice when you had none. Tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them back. I was drowning, I whispered. And you stood on the shore and watched. I know. Her voice cracked. And I'll never forgive myself for that. I sat in silence, staring out the window, my hands clenched tight around the coffee cup. You said you had something to tell me, I finally said. What is it? She took a deep breath. I didn't just come to say sorry. I came because you need to know something. Something about Mama. And Harold. My heart skipped. What about them? She hesitated. Mama knew. About Harold. About how he treated you. And she tried to stop it. I blinked. What are you talking about? She came to me 6 months before she died, Joyce continued, her voice trembling. She told me she was afraid for you. Said you weren't yourself. Said Harold was breaking you in ways she couldn't fix. My mouth went dry. She made me promise, Joyce said, that if anything ever happened to her, I'd look after you. That I'd step in. But I didn't. I was angry at her. Angry at you. Angry at everyone back then. And when she passed, I ran. My breath caught in my throat. Mama tried to protect me? All these years, I thought she was blind to it. I thought she chose not to see what was happening behind my smile. But she saw. She knew. She even wrote you a letter, Joyce whispered. I looked up sharply. A letter. She reached into her purse and pulled out a yellowed envelope, worn at the edges. Mama's handwriting scrawled across the front in faded ink. To Martha. When the time is right. I couldn't face it. I kept it hidden all these years, Joyce said. But it's time. With shaking hands, I took the envelope. My fingers hovered over the seal. Do you want me to stay? Joyce asked softly. No, I said. Not yet. She nodded, stood slowly, and walked away, leaving me alone with the last words Mama ever wrote to me. I sat there for a long time. Then slowly, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. The ink had faded, but Mama's neat cursive still danced across the page. I read every word, my hands trembling. My dearest Martha, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here. And it means the pain you've been carrying is heavier than I feared. I saw it, baby. I saw what he was doing. Not just the bruises, but the way he looked at you. The way you stopped laughing. The way you folded into yourself like a paper bird. I tried to get through to you, but you were always so strong. Too strong. Always putting on a brave face, even when your heart was breaking. I want you to know something. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are loved. And if you ever find yourself ready to walk away, don't look back. Don't let guilt trap you. Your silence isn't shameful. It's just waiting to be broken. And when you do break it, roar, my baby. Roar like the lioness I know you are. I love you forever. Mama. Tears poured down my cheeks. Right there in that diner booth, I cried harder than I had in years. Because for the first time I knew Mama didn't fail me. She saw me. And she believed in me. Even when I didn't believe in myself. I held the letter to my heart and whispered, I'm roaring now, Mama. Just like you told me to. Later that evening, I returned to Debbie's house, emotionally drained but somehow lighter. Joyce hadn't asked for forgiveness, and I wasn't ready to give it, not yet. But I was glad she came. That letter, that truth. It unlocked something inside me I didn't even know was still locked. But just as the healing began again, life threw another twist. That night, as I stood in the kitchen brewing tea, the landline rang. Debbie picked up. Her eyes went wide. Martha, it's the sheriff. My heart stopped. I took the phone. Mrs. Green, the voice said, we've got a situation. We just received word. Harold may have attempted to contact a known associate from your past. A man named Wayne Thatcher. Do you know that name? The room started spinning. Wayne Thatcher. A name I hadn't heard in 30 years. And if Harold was reaching out to him, then I was in more danger than I ever imagined. Wayne Thatcher. That name hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't heard it in 3 decades, and I'd hoped I never would again. I clutched the phone tighter. Sheriff. How do you know Harold contacted Wayne? The sheriff cleared his throat. There was an intercepted letter from Harold, found during a routine inspection of his mail privileges. It was addressed to Thatcher's old business location in Raleigh. It didn't make it to him. We caught it in time. But the contents were disturbing. My skin went cold. What did it say? Harold was asking Wayne to help him find you once he got out. Said you were spreading lies. Said he wanted to make things right. He also mentioned you had money tucked away. We're not sure what that means. I almost dropped the phone. Wayne Thatcher was not just some old friend of Harold's. He was worse. Much worse. He was the man Harold used to go drinking with every Friday night back in the early years of our marriage. They were inseparable for a time. Loud, rude, always bragging about how they kept their women in check. Wayne gave me the creeps from the first moment I met him. He'd leer at me like I was some object, not a person. One time, when Harold wasn't looking, Wayne backed me against a wall at a barbecue and said, "If you ever get tired of the old man, you let me know. I know how to handle girls like you." I slapped him that day. Hard. He laughed like it was a game. Harold didn't defend me. In fact, when I told him what Wayne had said, he laughed too. From that moment on, I avoided Wayne like the plague. Eventually, after one too many run-ins, I told Harold if Wayne ever stepped foot in our home again, I'd leave. So Harold stopped bringing him around. But I knew they were still in touch, at least for a while. Then Wayne just disappeared. And now, after all these years, Harold had reached out to him? Why? What was he planning? Is Wayne still in Raleigh? I asked the sheriff. Unknown, he replied. He went off the radar years ago. Lost his contractor license after several assault complaints. We're doing a search now. We'll keep you informed. I hung up and sank into the kitchen chair, hands trembling. Debbie poured me a glass of water. Who is this Wayne guy? I told her everything. About the leering, the threats, the night at the barbecue. Her jaw clenched. He sounds worse than Harold. He is worse, I whispered. Rebecca came into the room just then, having overheard enough of the call to piece things together. Mom, you need more protection. If Harold's trying to involve this Wayne character, we don't know what he's capable of. I'll get a security system installed, Debbie said, grabbing her phone. First thing tomorrow morning. And cameras, Rebecca added. Inside and outside. We'll turn this place into Fort Knox. I nodded, numb. My mind was already racing. I couldn't stop imagining Harold and Wayne whispering in a prison letter, scheming. I thought I'd left the war behind. But somehow it had followed me here. The next day, while the cameras and locks were being installed, I went through my old journals, looking for any scrap of information I could remember about Wayne. Old addresses, phone numbers, something to help the police track him. I found a torn envelope at the back of one notebook. A Raleigh return address. My heart thudded. I called the sheriff and gave them the address. It's old, but maybe someone there still knows him. I spent that night sleeping with one eye open. The cameras blinked red in the hallway. The doors were bolted. And yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. 2 days later, I got the call. Martha, we found Wayne, the sheriff said. He's in South Carolina now. Been living under a different name. But get this. He was arrested last night for trespassing on a woman's property. She found him lurking in her backyard with a pair of bolt cutters. I nearly dropped the phone. He's being held in custody, the sheriff continued. But we're flagging him as a high-risk contact. And we've connected his name to a burner phone call made from a public phone booth near the prison where Harold is being held. Looks like he was trying to coordinate something. My blood ran cold. What does this mean for me? I asked. We're placing both your name and your current address on a high-priority alert. If Wayne's released, we'll notify you immediately. In the meantime, stay vigilant. After I hung up, I stared out the window for a long time. They hadn't just threatened my peace. They tried to steal it from me. But I wasn't a victim anymore. That night, I made a decision. If Harold and Wayne thought they could intimidate me into silence again, they'd learn just how loud a grandma can get. The next day, I called a local journalist, someone who had reached out to me after the rally video went viral. I asked if she was still interested in doing a feature story. I want to go public, I told her. With everything. She came to Debbie's the next morning with a camera crew and a notebook. We sat on the porch swing while I told the world about Harold's abuse, the threats, the silent years, the pain, and now, this new danger. I even told them about Wayne. People like them, I said into the camera, they feed on silence. They count on fear. But when we speak, when we share, they lose their power. The segment aired that weekend on national news. Viewers poured in. Messages. Support. Donations to abuse shelters in my name. Survivors flooding my inbox. And one message that made me stop cold. It was from a woman in Charleston. She said she recognized Wayne's photo from the news report. He was my ex. He did to me what Harold did to you. Maybe worse. I never knew his real name until now. She thanked me, said I might have saved her life. And that was the moment I realized. This story wasn't just about me anymore. I was part of something bigger. I wasn't just surviving now. I was fighting. But then, just when I started to believe the worst was over, that the tide had fully turned, I received a call I never expected. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something in me said, pick it up. Hello. I said cautiously. There was a pause. Then a quiet voice answered. Martha, it's Ellie. My heart caught in my throat. Ellie. I said. Is everything okay, baby? She sounded nervous. Scared even. I'm sorry I didn't tell Mommy. I found your old letters in her drawer. I read them. I didn't know. I didn't know Grandpa hurt you like that. I closed my eyes, trying not to cry. Oh, sweetheart. I didn't want you to see that. I know, she said. But Grandma, that's not why I'm calling. I sat up straight. What is it? She hesitated, then whispered. I think someone was following me home from school today. The room spun. Ellie, I said, my voice shaking. Where are you right now? In my room. With the door locked. Mommy's downstairs. Did you tell her? No. I didn't want her to get scared. I gripped the phone tightly. Listen to me, baby. You're going to stay right there. I'm calling your mama. And I promise no one is going to hurt you. Not ever. As soon as we hung up, I dialed Rebecca with shaking hands. Because now it wasn't just me they were targeting. It was my family. And that changed everything. I was out the door before I even finished the call with Rebecca. Pack a bag, I told her. You and Ellie are coming to Debbie's. Right now. I don't care if it's the middle of the night. Rebecca didn't argue. Her voice was tight with panic. Mom, I think you're right. I noticed a car parked down the block 2 days in a row. I didn't think anything of it until now. Same black pickup. Windows tinted. It just sat there, engine running. My stomach twisted. Do not wait another second. Grab what you need and get out of there. I will, she said. Just stay on the phone with Ellie until we're in the car. I called Ellie back. Her little voice was trying to sound brave, but I could hear the fear under it. Grandma, she whispered. I'm right here, sugar. You're doing so good. Just sit tight while Mommy packs. You're both coming to me, okay? No one's going to hurt you. Outside, the Tennessee moon hung low and quiet over Debbie's porch, but I couldn't enjoy the stillness. My mind was racing. My blood was boiling. How dare they? How dare they drag an innocent child into this? It was no longer about threats or fear or silence. It was about war. And this time, I was choosing the battlefield. An hour later, Rebecca's car pulled into the driveway. I ran out to meet them. Ellie flew into my arms, sobbing quietly into my shoulder. It's okay, baby. You're safe now, I whispered, holding her tighter than I ever had before. Rebecca looked exhausted, pale. Her eyes were ringed with fear. I haven't seen that truck again since we left, she said. But I didn't want to wait and find out if it was just coincidence. It wasn't, I said. I know it wasn't. Debbie welcomed them both inside and locked every door behind us. We made up the guest rooms, but no one slept much that night. I stayed up in the hallway, a flashlight in my lap and the family Bible on the table beside me. Because sometimes protection comes in layers: locks, light, and faith. The next morning, I called the sheriff. He agreed to send a patrol car by Rebecca's house to look for the truck and check for any surveillance footage from neighbors. I also called the state investigator overseeing Harold's parole review. I want you to look into Wayne again, I said. This is escalating. And now my granddaughter's been followed. That word, granddaughter, hit hard on the other end of the line. He promised to increase monitoring and keep both Harold and Wayne under full review. But I could hear it in his voice. He was worried too. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. A package arrived. No return address. We stared at it in silence. Debbie grabbed her husband's old toolkit and carefully opened it in the garage, just in case. Inside was a stuffed rabbit, the same kind Ellie always carried when she was little. And pinned to its ear was a tiny note. Pretty girls deserve pretty things. I felt the rage rise up through my spine. Rebecca gasped, clapping a hand to her mouth. Ellie, standing behind her, whispered, That's the same bunny I lost at Grandma's old house when I was 4. We all looked at each other. How did someone have that toy? How did they know where to send it? Who was behind this? Harold? Wayne? Someone else? Debbie called the sheriff immediately. They sent an officer to collect the package and fingerprint the contents. But part of me already knew we wouldn't get anything useful. Whoever sent that, they were careful and cruel. I sat on the porch swing alone that night, wrapped in a shawl, watching the stars. For the first time since Harold's arrest, I felt truly exposed again. Not afraid, just haunted. This evil wasn't just behind me now. It was hunting me. The next day, I took action. I reached out to a friend of mine from the domestic violence network, a woman named Trina. She'd once gone toe-to-toe with her own ex-husband, who'd stalked her across 3 states before being locked up for good. Sounds like you need to go public again, Trina said. More public than ever. I nodded. I was thinking the same. So we organized a town forum at the community center. We invited survivors, legal experts, activists, and most importantly, the media. They came in droves. News vans lined the street. People filled the hall shoulder to shoulder. And when I stepped up to the microphone, I didn't hesitate. My name is Martha Green, I said, voice steady. And someone tried to follow my granddaughter home from school. Gasps echoed through the crowd. I told them about the bunny, the letter, the car. I didn't name Harold or Wayne yet, but I laid the truth bare. They tried to destroy me once, I said. But I'm still here. And now they're coming for the people I love. So I'm going to say this loud and clear. If you're out there listening, this is your last warning. You will not win. The applause rose like thunder. Tears streamed down cheeks. And reporters scribbled every word. It wasn't long before the video hit national headlines. Grandma activist speaks out after stalker threatens grandchild. Suddenly, I had an army of strangers behind me. People offering help. Experts offering protection tips. A retired police officer from Atlanta even offered to install new security systems for free. But the most unexpected message came from a man named Bill Harper, a former private investigator. I saw your story, he said. And I've dealt with men like Harold and Wayne before. If you're open to it, I'd like to help you find out who's behind this before they strike again. I hesitated. Letting a stranger into my life again, after everything I'd been through, was terrifying. But protecting my family mattered more than fear. I called him the next day. All right, I said. Let's find out who's trying to break me. He chuckled softly. They've already failed, ma'am. You're still standing. And that means you've already won more than they know. But just as we began piecing together clues, something happened that none of us expected. Ellie came running down the hallway late one night, crying. Rebecca and I rushed to her room. She was holding her phone. There was a message, she sobbed. A video. We took the phone. It was a short clip, grainy and shaky. The camera pointed at a school building, then zoomed in on a classroom window, and a voice whispered on the video. Little Ellie. So smart. So sweet. So easy to find. Rebecca collapsed into a chair, her face pale. I pressed the phone to my chest, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. And I knew. This was no longer just a threat. This was a warning. And the next move might be the one that would change all our lives forever. The moment I saw that video, grainy, shaky but real, I knew. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was a countdown. They were watching us, watching her, and I was done playing defense. "Bill," I said the next morning when I called the private investigator, "I want to find Wayne. Now, I want to look him in the eye and tell him if he ever comes near my family again, I will bury him with the truth." There was a pause on the line. Then Bill said quietly, "You might just get your chance, Martha." He tracked a series of rental cabins about 40 minutes from our town. One had been paid for in cash, under the name Richard Wade. A fake name Wayne Thatcher had used before. "He's holed up there. Been coming and going at odd hours. No job, no local ties. Seems like he's waiting for something. Or someone." My voice turned cold. "Send me the address." Bill hesitated. "You sure? This could go sideways. He's dangerous." "I'm sure. But I'm not going alone." I called Sheriff Tom. Told him everything. He listened in silence. Then said, "I'll meet you there. But you let us go in first. If Wayne's there, he's likely armed. This could get ugly." I agreed. That night, I kissed Ellie's forehead while she slept. "I love you, baby," I whispered. "And I will protect you with everything I have." Rebecca and Debbie begged me not to go. But this was something I had to do. Not for revenge. For closure. And for freedom. We pulled up to the cabin just before sunset. It was a small, sagging structure tucked into a wooded lot, the kind that looked forgotten by time and mostly by the law. 2 patrol cars parked nearby. Tom stood by the porch with his hand resting on his holster. "You ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." "Stay here," he ordered, motioning to his deputies. They knocked twice. No answer. Then a third knock, louder. Still nothing. One of the deputies moved to the side, peering into the window. Then he cursed. "He's in there. I see him. He's just sitting on the couch, staring at us." Tom shouted, "Wayne Thatcher. This is the sheriff's department. Open the door with your hands up." Nothing. Then click. The door opened. Wayne stood in the doorway grinning, just like I remembered. Dirty jeans. Oil-stained jacket. That same snake-like glint in his eyes. "Well, well," he said. "If it ain't little Martha Green. All grown up and acting brave." My stomach churned, but I didn't flinch. Tom stepped between us. "Wayne, you're under investigation for harassment and threats involving a minor. We're going to need you to come with us." Wayne chuckled. "You got nothing." I stepped forward. Tom held out an arm. "Martha, I need to say something," I whispered. He gave me a warning look, then nodded once. I took a deep breath. "Wayne, listen to me. I don't care what Harold promised you, or what lies he told. You come near my family again, and I will make sure you're locked in a cage so deep they'll need a shovel to find you." His grin faltered. "Whatever you're trying to prove, it won't work. I already survived Harold. I survived you. I'm not afraid of either of you anymore." His smile disappeared completely. "You've been following my granddaughter," I added. "Sending packages. Videos. You think you're clever, but you're leaving a trail. And I promise you, every step you take, we're 2 steps ahead." He sneered. "That's a big speech for a little lady." I stared him dead in the eye. "That's what Harold used to say before I put him in a cell." Tom cuffed him and read his rights. Wayne didn't resist. As they led him to the patrol car, he glanced over his shoulder. And in that moment, I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Not fear of me, maybe, but fear that the game was over. Later that night, back at Debbie's house, I sat in the kitchen with Bill Harper, going over everything we knew. "We still can't prove Wayne sent the video," he said. But the laptop in his cabin had traces of video editing software. And those stuffed bunnies? There were 2 more in a bag under his bed. My jaw tightened. "He's not smart. But he's persistent." Bill leaned back in his chair. "Persistent men are dangerous. But exposed men? They're weak." I nodded. "I'll make sure he stays exposed." I didn't sleep much that night. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. We were finally getting ahead. 3 days passed. Ellie started smiling again. Rebecca took her back to school with a personal escort. Debbie's house felt warm again. I thought maybe we'd turn the page. Then came the phone call. But not from the sheriff. Not from the school. From the prison. I picked up, confused. "Mrs. Green," the voice said, "we need to inform you that Harold Green has filed a request for a formal public hearing regarding his parole, and he has listed you as a necessary witness." I blinked. "What?" "He's requesting that you be present to testify to his changed character and the misunderstanding surrounding your abuse claims." I could barely breathe. "He wants me to defend him." "Yes, ma'am. If you don't appear, he can claim the process was unfairly denied. You're listed as the central victim, so your testimony matters." I leaned against the wall, dizzy. "I'll be there," I said. "But he's not going to like what I have to say." As I hung up the phone, my heart thundered. He wasn't done yet. Harold was going to stand up in court and try to rewrite history. But this time, I wasn't going to suffer in silence. This time, I was going to speak. And I was going to speak loud. The courtroom was cold. Not the kind of cold that comes from air conditioning, but the kind that creeps into your bones and stays there. The kind of cold that only shows up when you're face to face with a past you never wanted to see again. I sat in the front row, next to a court victim liaison and Rebecca. Her hand trembled in mine, but her eyes were steel. Ellie wasn't here, thank God. I'd made sure she was in school and safe, surrounded by people who had no idea what her grandma was doing today. I glanced toward the back of the room. Cameras lined the walls. News crews. Reporters. Notepads in hand. Microphones clipped to collars. I'd fought to make sure this hearing was public. I wanted the world to see the truth. And then he walked in. Harold Green. My ex-husband. My abuser. He was thinner now. His once powerful shoulders slumped. His orange jumpsuit hung loose on his frame. But his eyes, those eyes were exactly the same. Dead. Cold. Calculating. Our eyes met. He smiled. That same smile he used to give me before everything went dark. But this time, I didn't look away. The judge entered. Everyone stood. And just like that, the hearing began. Harold's lawyer, a slick young man in an expensive suit, stood first. "Your Honor, my client has served 10 years of his 20-year sentence. In that time, he has completed anger management, undergone psychological evaluations, and received glowing behavior reports from the prison staff." He gestured to Harold. "Mr. Green has also expressed remorse for his past actions and wishes to reintegrate into society as a changed man. His only request is for a fair second chance." The judge nodded. Then it was my turn. I took the stand. My legs were shaking, but my voice? Steady as stone. "Mrs. Green," the prosecutor said gently, "you are Harold Green's ex-wife. Can you tell us about your experience living with him?" I swallowed. Then I began. "I suffered in silence for 10 years. The room froze. 10 years I lived with a man who beat me, broke me, isolated me from everyone I loved. He called it discipline. I called it survival. I glanced at Harold. He made me feel like I was nothing, like if I disappeared no one would notice. I stayed quiet to protect my daughter, to protect myself. But one night he came home drunk and nearly killed me. That's when I broke free. I held up my wrist, where the scar still showed faintly from the night he twisted it until the bone cracked. This is what he left me with. This, and a lifetime of nightmares." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. I turned to the judge. "I understand that parole is a legal process. But I'm here to tell you, this man has not changed. He has manipulated the system. He has used others to threaten me and my family even while behind bars." That got the judge's attention. I continued. "My granddaughter was sent threatening messages. My daughter was followed. A private investigator found evidence linking it back to Wayne Thatcher, Harold's old friend. You think this is coincidence? It's not. It's a pattern. It's control. And it hasn't stopped." The defense attorney stood. "Objection, Your Honor. That's hearsay." The judge waved it off. "Overruled. Continue, Mrs. Green." I looked at Harold. This time, I didn't see fear in his eyes. I saw hatred. And that's when I knew. I had him. I was scared to speak out back then. But I'm not scared anymore. And if you let him walk free, he will destroy someone else. He doesn't want freedom. He wants control. I finished. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. The judge called for a recess. As I stepped down from the stand, Harold spoke. Just loud enough for me to hear. "You think you won?" he muttered. I stopped. Looked him right in the eye. "I know I did. Because I'm still standing. And you're still shackled." Rebecca pulled me away before I could say more. But it was done. The truth was out. The courtroom reconvened an hour later. The judge didn't waste time. "Parole denied," she said. "Mr. Green's behavior, past and present, shows a continued pattern of manipulation and potential danger. This court will not gamble with public safety." The gavel struck. It was over. Harold's head dropped. He was escorted out without a word. As the cameras flashed and reporters swarmed, I stood up, holding Rebecca's hand. The courtroom didn't cheer. It didn't need to, because justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. "You're free." That night, back at Debbie's house, we had spaghetti and garlic bread. Nothing fancy. Just food, laughter, and the kind of peace we hadn't felt in months. Ellie danced in the living room to some silly pop song. Rebecca leaned against me. "You did it, Mom," she said. "You actually did it." "No," I said softly. "We did it." Bill Harper called the next morning. Wayne's charges were sticking. Threatening a minor. Trespassing. Possession of illegal surveillance devices. His fingerprints had finally been matched to the package and the stuffed bunnies. He wouldn't be going anywhere for a long time. One by one, the pieces were falling into place. One by one, the shadows were disappearing. And then, just when I thought the nightmare was finally behind us, a letter arrived in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. I opened it carefully. Inside, on plain white paper, were just 5 words. "You only stopped one monster." My hands trembled. There was no signature. Just a tiny smear of something dark in the corner. Ink. Blood. I couldn't tell. But what I did know was this. This wasn't over. Not yet. I stared at the letter. "You only stopped one monster." 5 words. That's all it took to rip the piece I'd fought so hard to build into shreds. I sat at the kitchen table, the house quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall. The girls were out for groceries. Ellie was with her friend's mom. I was alone, but in that moment, I felt like someone else was in the room with me, watching, breathing behind my neck. I grabbed my phone and called Sheriff Tom. He arrived 20 minutes later, lights off, no sirens. He didn't want to scare the neighborhood. Tom looked at the letter, sniffed the paper like it might give off some secret clue, then bagged it in a plastic evidence pouch. "No fingerprints," he said. "But I'll send it to the lab anyway. Could be a copycat. Could be Wayne pulling strings. But it could be someone else," I said, and he nodded grimly. "I'm gonna keep a patrol car nearby for the next few weeks. If this is just someone trying to scare you, they'll get tired. But if it's something more..." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I already knew what he was thinking. I already felt it. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the floor, every gust of wind against the windows made my heart skip. I kept thinking about the letter, about the way it was written. Tight handwriting, no slant, all capital letters. Cold, clean, focused. This wasn't a prank. It was a message. But from who? Wayne was in custody. Harold was locked away, parole denied. So, who was left? The next morning, I went to the local coffee shop to clear my head. As I waited for my drink, I saw a man at the corner table reading the newspaper. Not unusual. Except he was reading yesterday's paper. Backwards. And he was watching me. I turned to the barista, pretending to stir my coffee, then glanced back. Gone. I rushed outside, scanning the street. Nothing. No man. No paper.
No trace.
A chill ran through me. Something was wrong. Something was still wrong. That evening, as we sat down to dinner, Debbie said something that stopped me mid-bite. "You know," she said casually, "when I was picking Ellie up from school, I thought I saw someone who looked like Rebecca's old boyfriend. What was his name again?" "Jake." I nearly choked. Jake, I said slowly. Are you sure? Debbie shrugged. Could have been someone else, but it looked like him. Tall, buzz cut. He was just standing by the corner, across from the school. Didn't wave. Just watched. Rebecca froze. Her fork dropped to the plate. That's not possible, she whispered. I haven't spoken to him in over a year. Not since Ellie's birthday party. He disappeared. Debbie looked confused. Disappeared. Rebecca nodded. He ghosted me. Changed his number. Deleted his social media. I figured he just didn't want to be a dad. Silence. Then it clicked. Like someone turned on a light in the darkest room of my mind. Rebecca, I said, my voice tight. Has Jake ever met Harold? Her eyes widened. No. Why? But I could already feel the truth. The kind that burns when it settles in your gut. Jake. He'd come around when Rebecca moved back in with me. He asked about my old stories. He once found an old newspaper clipping of Harold's arrest and didn't ask a single question. Just tucked it into his wallet and walked away. At the time, I thought he was being respectful. But now I wasn't sure. The next day, I went to Sheriff Tom again. Told him everything. He pulled up Jake's name. His records. His old addresses. His social accounts, most of them deactivated. Then he said something that nearly stopped my heart. Martha, you're not gonna believe this. He turned the monitor toward me. A file was open on the screen. Jake Holloway, age 29. Originally from Kentucky. Lived in our state for 4 years. And under known associates. One name jumped out. Wayne Thatcher. I stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. What? I gasped. Looks like Jake's father used to work with Wayne in a construction company. And Jake? He was arrested at 17 for breaking into a woman's house. Charges dropped. Juvenile sealed. But it's there. My heart pounded in my ears. It was him. I whispered. It's him. Tom moved fast. Within 48 hours they tracked Jake's car to a motel on the edge of town. Room 207. When they busted in, he was gone. But inside they found maps. Photos. A burner phone. One of the stuffed bunnies' gutted wires sticking out. And on the motel dresser? A copy of the letter. You only stopped one monster. This wasn't just a scare campaign. It was a mission. Jake had been planning something. Maybe revenge. Maybe worse. And we didn't know how far he'd go. That night we locked every door. Closed every curtain. Police cruisers patrolled every hour. Rebecca slept with Ellie in her bed, holding her like she might disappear. I sat up in the living room with a baseball bat, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in years. Then at 3:16 a.m., my phone buzzed. A video message. Unknown number. Hands shaking, I tapped play. The video showed a forest clearing. A dark figure stood in the distance, wearing a hoodie, holding a match. Behind him something burned. As he walked closer to the camera he spoke. And I recognized the voice. It was Jake. Hi Martha, he said softly. You taught me something important. That silence is a weapon. That pain can sit quietly for years until it explodes. He looked into the lens. And smiled. This is just the beginning. Then the screen went black. I dropped the phone. Because behind him, just before the video ended, I saw something I'll never forget. A photograph. A family photo. Me, Rebecca, and Ellie. Pinned to a tree. With a knife. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was at war. Friends, this has been my story so far. My name is Martha Green. I'm 64 years old, speaking to you from North Carolina. And if you followed me all the way here through this 10-part journey, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and click the notification bell, so you never miss the next chapter in our lives. And now I want to hear from you. Which part of the country, or the world, are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below. Because this story might be mine, but the fight? It's ours. And we're not done yet. I'll see you soon. Stay safe. Stay alert. And never, ever suffer in silence.